Howdy y'all, it's Chris with Jolla Fitness, favorite trainer with a belt buckle. Today we're going to be going over all the vocab words for our hip semester. Before we do that, make sure to follow us on YouTube and Instagram. We have Show Up Fitness and then also Show Up Fitness Internship, of which the next class begins June 3rd. Hopefully very soon in La Jolla. We're shooting for an October start date for an internship down there. So, hip semester we go over vocab words. Shoulder semester we do acronyms. BMI, BMR, TDEE, that's the other semester. This semester we're going over vocab words, so let's power through these. The first one, a ligament. Ligament is connecting bone to bone. Think of your ACL, anterior cruciate ligament. You have your PCL, posterior cruciate ligament, bone to bone. A tendon, the most popular one, is Achilles. Remember his mom held him over the river of Styx. Everything was mortal except his Achilles tendon, which is muscle to bone. You have your soleus and your gastroc that go into your calcaneus bone. Avascular. Vascularity is blood flow. You see people get a pump, they got the vascularity. A means without, so lack of blood flow. The reason we lift light for beginners for the first month, 12 to 20 repetitions, is due to ligaments and tendons do not adapt nearly as fast as muscle because they are avascular. The basic unit for bone is the osteon. Osteoporosis, the prefix of osteo, bone, porosis, pores in the bone, is characterized by a standard deviation, I believe, of 2.5. Don't quote me on that for bone mineral density. Osteopenia is 1.5. Biarticulate. We have a lot of biarticulate muscles. Bi means two, articulation, crossing two joints. So for the hip, my favorite muscle, sartorius, starts on the hip, crosses the hip joint, comes into the knee joint, crosses the knee joint as well. The gastrocnemius is biarticulate, the knee and the ankle joint. Axial and appendicular, skelly right here. Come here, buddy. Come here. Come on. There you go. We have the skull, the vertebrae, the ribs, and the sternum. That's the axial skeleton. Everything that's coming out is the appendicular. 206 bones in the human body. Thank you, Skelly. Valsalva maneuver. Take a big deep breath. Your core's tight. It's like you're trying to take a poop. That is shutting, it's pushing air against a closed glottis, increasing your blood pressure. Very advantageous for maximal lifts. People who have high blood pressure are not used to lifting. They need to make sure to breathe eccentric on a bench press. Breathe out. The Valsalva maneuver is holding your breath. You're going to get like a 5 to as high as 7 times increase in blood pressure. Calcaneus, that's where your Achilles tendon goes into. It's the bottom of your tarsal. It's a tarsal bone. A sprain and a strain. A strain is to a muscle or a tendon. A pec strain. A sprain is to a ligament. You sprain an ankle. You have grades 1, 2, and 3. 3 being the worst. A lot of times that will be a severed tendon or ligament. Ligament. 1, 2, and 3 for sprain and strain. Anaerobic means without oxygen, and that's going to be carbohydrates will be the primary fuel source for bioenergetics. Aerobic would be fat. Beta oxidation is primarily utilizing triglycerides as well as protein. Law of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So if you have, Chris, I'm 200 pounds, and I'm eating 1,500 calories, but I'm not losing weight. What that means is that I'm not tracking my food properly. Because if I was eating 1,500 calories, I would be losing weight. That's the law of thermodynamics. You can't just create energy nor just destroy it. Gluconeogenesis. Genesis is the generation. Neo is the new. Glucose. So you're making new glucose, and you're going to be doing that via muscle. Of the branched chain amino acids, we primarily break down the branched chain amino acids during gluconeogenesis. Fatty acids are the basic unit for fat. Amino acids are the basic unit for protein. This is digestion that we talk about. So when you break down fat, we break it down into a bunch of fatty acids. Protein into 20 amino acids, which we have essential and non-essential. Non-essential the body can already make. Essential you need to consume in your diet, of which all animal products are a full amino profile. Monosaccharides, you have monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Glucose, fructose, and galactose. So fructose is coming from fruit, galactose is milk. Put glucose in lactose together, you're going to get lactose. Anytime you have an intolerance because you lack an ACE, which is an enzyme. So lactose intolerance is you lack lactase. Say that one 5 times. Monosaccharides, again, glucose, fructose, and galactose. Let's go to the very top. Sarcomere is the basic unit for muscle. We have actin and myosin, which are the small units of the myofilament. Motor unit, I remember this one vividly from physiology in college 2003, Dr. Day's class. A motor unit is a motor neuron and all the associated muscle fibers it innervates. Boom, still got it. So the brain talking to the muscles, and you have a ton of motor units that are going to be associated with muscle. You could, like in your quadriceps, for example, you have thousands and thousands of motor units. A higher volition is meaning that you're recruiting more. So when we work out, we're trying to create a increase the volition of the motor units. Catabolic means to break down. The most famous catabolic hormone in this class we talk about is cortisol. It's nor good nor bad. It is what it is. It's anti-inflammatory, breaks down. It should be high in the morning, low at night. Because we stress so much in the fight or flight response, we do all this cardio, we're constantly like in a catabolic state because we have so much cortisol, so it gets a bad rep. Nothing wrong with cortisol. I love cortisol, as should you. It's when it gets out of whack. It's like the Goldilocks hormone is what I call it. Too much is bad, too low is bad. We want to be right in the middle. Most popular anabolic is testosterone, growth hormone, insulin growth factor. Those are all anabolic hormones. Q angle, you can tell Skelly right here is a male because his pelvis and the way it articulates at the knee. The wider the pelvis, the greater the angle. So the articulation of the knee is going to make that individual more prone to an MCL or ACL sprain. So that's why females are 7 times more likely in soccer to sprain ACL versus men because of that Q angle. Also control the glutes. Needs analysis. The NSCA, National Strength and Conditioning Association, they have 4 things that you're going to look at for every athlete. And I like to incorporate this with all clients. So you're going to look at prior history of injuries. You're going to look at the muscles being used, muscle actions, and bioenergetics. So what are your goals? That's all that you do during the park here. So you're going to learn about their medical history, and then you're going to design a program based off what they need. So if you look at an athlete like a baseball player, Krusty's notorious, he's not going to have a bench. Because when you look at the specificity of the sport, the scapula needs to move. So when I'm bench pressing, I lock down my scapula, so that exercise specifically for overhead athletes is probably not the best. Hypertension is high blood pressure, either the top number, which is systolic, or the bottom number, diastolic. Above 140 for systolic, above 90 for diastolic. Kyphosis would be here. Lordosis here. It's a curvature of the back. Scoliosis would be like an S, side to side. Tachycardia. Find the radial artery. Take your pulse right now. If it's greater than 100 and a seated position and resting position, that is not a good sign. I'll probably refer you to a doctor. Ask if you have taken any pre-workout, if you've smoked, if you're hungover, dehydrated, stressed out, not sleeping. There's a lot of factors that could contribute that in a resting state. But if all of those things are not part of the equation, meaning you're sleeping fine and you don't have stress, you're just overweight to obese, and you have a high resting heart rate above 100, I'm not going to take you through a workout. I need you to go to the doctor to get that checked out. When in doubt, refer out. Diabetes, we have 3 types. You're probably familiar with 1 and 2, but we also have gastrointestinal, GI. So we have type 1, which is going to call onset or genetic, which is you get it usually before the age of 10. It's about 5 to 10% of diabetics. Type 2, self-induced. That is insulin resistant. So your pancreas releases insulin, takes sugar out of the blood, and it takes it away. It's either going to take it into your muscle or liver glycogen, excess is restored as fat. So through stress, lack of sleep, and poor exercising and nutrition habits, we can develop a resistance to insulin. So the pancreas keeps on pumping out insulin, and it's not taking sugar out of the body because the cells aren't recognizing it. So then what we do is we get elevated blood sugar levels, and you need to go on medication, exercise regularly. Make sure to consult with your doctor before you go off any medication. Trainers cannot tell anyone to go off medication. And then we're going to go over here to the patterns of movement. So we keep this up here pretty much all semester long. We have our squat, which is more knee dominant. We have a hinge, which is more hip dominant. Unilateral, like a step up lunge. Push vertical, pull horizontal, press horizontal, anti-rotation, transitional, breathing, and carrying. Those are the main movement patterns that we like to look at. Transitional, breathing, carry, anti-rotation, that's kind of more advanced. So you can look at someone to see if they're breathing more through the chest. Quick little test you can do is to take a big deep breath in. Should be 2/3, 1/3. So big deep breath. We find people so if you're chest breathers, probably should get in that pec minor. Teach them to engage their diaphragm better. Hip anatomy, let's go through this real quickly. I'm just going to touch on the agonists. I don't want to spend an hour on this video, so we look at the actions in the sagittal plane. We have flexion and extension. Frontal plane, AB, adduction. Transverse, we have external and internal rotation. This is all at the hip. The agonist for extension is going to be your glute max. Agonist for flexion is going to be your psoas. Your agonist for abduction is going to be your glute med. Your agonist for adduction is going to be your magnus. External rotation is going to be your piriformis. Internal rotation is going to be your mag again. There's 4 quad muscles. The quads extend the knee joint. The 4 quad muscles are your rectus femoris, vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, vastus intermedius. There's 4 quad muscles. Hamstrings, we have 3 on the lateral. Behind the knee, you'll feel this guitar string. That's your bicep femoris. And then your 2 semimembranosus, semitendinosus. Those are medial hamstring muscles. They flex the knee and they extend the hip. We have the adductors. So we have the adductor magnus longus brevis. The acronym we have Major League Baseball has great pitching. You also have the gracilis and the pectineus that work with adduction. The calf muscles, I call it a burger. So we have the anterior side. We've got the antib. Behind that, you have the posterior tib. You have a few peroneal muscles. Then you have the soleus and the gastrocnemius. The gastrocnemius is biarticulate across the 2 joints. When you stand up and you go to your toes, it's primarily your agonist would be your gastroc. When you bend and you plantar flex, it's primarily your soleus. Your glute muscles, you have the max, which is the big one. You have the med, which is the lateral one. Then you have the min, which is really deep. Those are the main muscles that we cover. So we have 40 plus muscles around the hip up here, like your lats and deep rector muscles, your deep 6 rotators, a lot of muscles around the hip that we memorize, and we recognize the agonist for the actions. Shoulder semester, we get into acronyms. So hopefully you enjoyed this little review of what we go over in class. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube. As I said, our internship is going to be opening up in La Jolla. Really excited. We're hoping for September and October. You can check us out on our website, showupfitness.com. Become a trainer. If you're interested in becoming a trainer, we have a course where you learn anatomy, physiology, proper movement through the patterns of movement. You actually get to train people while you're in class, and that's huge because there's no certifications. We're not a certification. We're an internship, which is 10 times better. Or school out there. The schools, they don't allow you to train people. So biasly, we're the best. But you get to learn how to train people. If you want to get a certification, you can. I prep people to take the NASM. I don't like show up trainers to get NASM certified because that piece of paper doesn't mean you're a great trainer. Majority, 90% of trainers at Show Up Fitness are not certified. They have the education, the foundation of movement. They have their license. They have their insurance, and then AED CPR. Hopefully you guys like this.